Star Wars 7x7 episode 1800. Yep, 1800 episodes. Well, not exactly, and I'll explain as I recap some highlights from the last 100 episodes of Star Wars 7x7. Here we go. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode, whether it's 1 or 100 or 1855 episodes. That's what I meant at the top of the show. It's actually 1855 episodes in total, including today's episode, thanks to all the bonus episodes that I've done over the years. And in these last 100 episodes, or at least the time frame for that, I did another 7 bonus episodes as well, naturally centered around Celebration Chicago. So 107 episodes over these last 100 days. And that time period started March 1st. And I was rather shocked in looking back to realize that some of those episodes were actually recorded in Costa Rica, of all places, and some of them were recorded in Chicago as well. It's a first for both of those locations. And for, 107 episodes, I mean, the variety is rather stunning in its way. And that's not necessarily just, to be patting myself on the back. It's more just, when you look back at this stuff and you go, wow, like a lot happens in 3 months and change. And as happens around celebration time, interviews are a major chunk of the coverage, and so they become a major chunk of the episodes. And in this case, no different. 22 of the last 107 episodes were interview episodes. 2 of them actually are ones where I was interviewed as opposed to me interviewing other folks. And there were a couple where I put a couple of interviews in one episode. So I think it was 24 interviews conducted at Celebration overall, and ultimately wound up to make up 20 episodes of me interviewing people. And a couple episodes of me being interviewed. Additionally, we did a lot of book coverage here on Star Wars 7x7 in the last 100 episodes, and that started out early in the run with the Queen's Shadow coverage about Padme and her handmaidens and the transition to senatorhood. Also, some looks at the Flight of the Falcon publishing initiative, particularly Lando's Luck and Pirate's Price, because there's a tie-in to Galaxy's Edge out of that. And also, of course, we just wrapped up the ILM Presents Making Solo a Star Wars Storybook coverage too. And it wasn't quite a book, but it was, I guess, in the same vein, sort of the audiobook only release of Dooku Jedi Lost by Cavan Scott. Yeah, we talked about that for a few episodes during the past 100 days as well. And then, of course, we had the announcement of the Rise of Skywalker Publishing Initiative formally. We also got the Vanity Fair issue for the Rise of Skywalker. And big news stuff, of course, Galaxy's Edge opened in Anaheim, and Disney announced its movie slate and said that there will be a Star Wars movie in December of 2022, 24, and 26, and that Benioff and Weiss are getting the first of those movies. So yeah, there's been a lot of big news announced over the last little while. And it's going to be the same, of course, over the next 100 days, and I'll talk about that later in this episode. It hasn't been all entirely joyful, though, unfortunately, because within these last 100 days, we lost Peter Mayhew, which is a very affecting and emotional experience. And I imagine that similarly to how in the end of The Last Jedi, there was a dedication to Carrie Fisher, I imagine that we're going to see the same thing at the end of The Rise of Skywalker, that there will be a brief note on screen in tribute to Peter Mayhew as well. As far as the episodes that I did, the top 5 episodes in these last 100 days are the first episode from Star Wars Celebration Chicago, the Day 1 episode, where I talked about the Rise of Skywalker and other reveals from that day of Star Wars Celebration. That was the most downloaded episode of the show, followed closely by the episode where I surmised about all the different possibilities for Palpatine's laughter in the Rise of Skywalker teaser, like how it's possible that we could be hearing his voice in this thing, that it wasn't just some sound effect that they added. That was episode number 1749. 1743, for the record, was the Star Wars Celebration Day 1 episode. Also 1742 J.J. Abrams, in his comments ahead of Episode 9, or ahead of Celebration Chicago, I should say, 1753, which was the episode detailing George Lucas's involvement with Episode 9 and how it actually predates The Last Jedi even. And last but not least in the top 5 downloaded episodes, it was 1751, which is the possibilities for what planet that giant Death Star fragment is on. So that was episode 1751. As far as 3 of my own favorites on top of those, I would have to say the very first episode of this 100 Days, which was 1701, it was the episode where I'd been asked about other actors that auditioned for A New Hope, and to see the range of people who tried out for Luke and Han and Leia's characters, especially Han's characters, it's like the craziest who's who. Also, I love April Fool's Day and doing the Phantom Menace 20th anniversary re-release episode. That was 1732. That was good fun. And also 1756, which was the possibilities for how Rey's lightsaber could come back to life again. Because, of course, she said at Celebration Chicago that Rey's lightsaber lives, or that the lightsaber from Luke Skywalker lives. And so how is that possible? Well, yeah, that was one of my particular favorites too. Now, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll talk about the big news that will be coming over the next 100 days, and that'll give you an idea of what you're going to be hearing about on Star Wars 7x7 in the next 100 days. So stay tuned. Hey, Rebel Rouser. If you've got a business that needs to reach a dedicated audience of Star Wars fans, or you know somebody who does, then you might want to reach out to me. I've got a show that reaches thousands of people between the audio version, the video version, and our social media channels, and I'd love to find out how I can help you with your business ventures too. Just reach out at sw7x7.com/sponsors. That's plural SPONSORS. That's sw7x7.com/sponsors, and let's see how we can work together. Welcome back. So the big things that we know about that are happening over the next 100 days, and incidentally, that means that episode 1900 will come out on September 16th here at Star Wars 7x7. So the big stuff happening within that 100-day period includes the fact that Galaxy's Edge is going to open in Orlando, and we've also got San Diego Comic-Con happening within that time period as well. We still don't know what we're going to get out of it in terms of The Rise of Skywalker and or The Mandalorian potentially as well, and or Clone Wars Season 7. I mean, maybe a behind-the-scenes reel like we got for The Force Awakens. Maybe a costume display at the Lucasfilm Star Wars booth like they did for Rogue One. There are certainly possibilities. Some sort of Hall H presentation. Don't know. I mean, they've only done it the once, really, for The Force Awakens movie-wise. And then, of course, there was the Clone Wars thing, the announcement there that they did last year. So certainly possibilities, but anyway, those are the big ones. And there's also a lot of books that are coming out over the next little while. Alphabet Squadron is the most current one, or the most proximate one, I guess you would say, because it's coming out on Tuesday, on June 11th. We've also got the new Thrawn novel, Thrawn Treason, coming out in July. Crash of Fate by Zoraida Cordova, which is a Galaxy's Edge tie-in that's coming out in August, as well as Star Wars Myths and Fables, which is going to play in somehow, potentially, to the events of The Rise of Skywalker and the sequel era movies too. And also later in August, we're going to have the Black Spire novel from Delilah Dawson. And this is, in a way, a bit of a sequel to her Phasma novel, but it's also a Galaxy's Edge tie-in, but it's also potentially a Rise of Skywalker tie-in too. So yeah, there is a heck of a lot that will be brewing in the next 100 days, and naturally I'm going to be as on top of it for you as I possibly can be. So stay tuned. The ride is only going to stay fun and continue to be fun, and I'm so glad that you're joining me for it, as always. And that's going to do it for this episode, except for one last thing, which is, of course, me saying to you, may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.